This is the America we all depend on. These are the farmers who help build it. And every day, Farm Credit is here, just as we've been for more than 100 years, supporting rural communities and agriculture with reliable, consistent credit and financial services. In good times and bad, we provide loans to America's farmers and ranchers, farmer-owned cooperatives, rural homebuyers, agribusinesses, and rural infrastructure providers. From spring thaw to first frost and all the weather in between, Farm Credit understands the challenges and rewards that come with farming. We help agricultural producers feed the world and rural economies thrive. Our infrastructure lending helps provide rural towns with access to clean water, modern telecommunications, and reliable energy, ensuring rural families and businesses have the resources they need to prosper. We're cooperatives, locally owned and governed by our customers. So our commitments go beyond finances. We are deeply engaged members of our communities, supporting local 4-H and FFA chapters, farmers markets, and community services for the future of America's farmers and the food they provide to families every day. Farm Credit will be there. Learn more today.
Hi, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you, Brittany.
Perfect, thank you. Well, thanks, Tony, and thanks, Eric, for that session. That was really, really great and really interesting. And just before I begin, so my name is Brittany Jablonski. I am with Farm Credit. I am based in Washington, D.C. at the Farm Credit Council. We're the association that represents all the farm credit lenders across the country. And I'll talk a little bit more about who we are and what we do. But first, I just want to say thanks to Eric for that presentation. And one other resource I wanted to add to the mix and add to the great list that Eric had was a online course that we partnered with Michigan State on that is available to the public, available to anyone interested. And you can find the link to that at farmcredit.com. So it's all about learning to recognize the signs of stress, a lot of the stuff that Eric talked about today, but you might be interested in passing it along to friends or family that you know that may be interested. Learning about stress, learning about how to talk to someone who you think is considering suicide. I found that to be really helpful because, you know, as Eric said, it's a really hard topic to talk about, and it makes everyone uncomfortable. And just if you don't practice saying it, it's really hard. So like I said, that's at farmcredit.com on the main homepage if you're interested in learning more about that free online course. But I just want to say a couple of words to say, first of all, thank you all for being here. Thank you for taking the time to be a part of this. I know that you all have busy lives, and especially now with a lot of remote work and a lot of remote school, you know, some of you might have more of your family home and around than you normally do, and juggling all the responsibilities that come with that, juggling some of the challenges that COVID has posed for everyone's operations. So thanks for taking the time to be here. And it says a lot that you're willing to take the time and devote the time to this program. And thanks to National Milk for putting it on. It's a really, really great opportunity, and leadership development is so important. So we appreciate the opportunity to be here and to be a small part of it. One of the things that I get paid to do is to talk a little bit about Farm Credit and who we are and what we do. We are a national network of local ag lenders. We're in every state and Puerto Rico. We're all over the country. So you probably have seen us or seen our offices. But one of the things that I wanted to mention that we are particularly proud of is our support for young, beginning, and small farmers. So every farm credit institution has a program specifically meant to, tackle some of the unique challenges that young, beginning, and small producers face. So if you're interested in learning more about that, let me know, and I'm happy to direct you to the right resource, or you can go to farmcredit.com and find your local office, and they'll be able to share information about that as well. First of all, just again, thank you for being here, and Farm Credit's proud to sponsor this program, and I want to say that we do it because, I wish I could say we did it out of the goodness of our hearts, but we do it because we're selfish. We do it because we need you and we need your leadership. You know, farmers are not getting younger. If you look around at the leaders of your farm organizations in your community, you know, the farmers at the sales barn, the folks you see in your community, they're not getting any younger, and we really need young, fresh leadership. So it's time for the next generation, and we essentially our investment in you, and our expectation is that you're going to invest in us in the future as far as devoting your leadership to your community, to your farm organization, to your dairy co-op, whatever that may be. You know, everyone has a different leadership style. There are people who willingly volunteer when an opportunity arises, and there are people who need to be asked when a leadership opportunity arises. They say to themselves, you know, this isn't for me. Someone else should do this. I couldn't do this. Well, if you're one of the people who needs to be asked, I want you to consider this your blanket ask. This is your standing ask to be involved. The next time there's an opportunity to serve on your local farm credit board, your local rural electric co-op board, a leadership opportunity in your local farm bureau or farmers union, you know, run for local political office, county commissioner, school board, that kind of stuff. Whenever those opportunities arise, consider this your ask. You know, I know that everyone's busy, and we, of course, are, you know, crazy busy right now, again, with all the challenges that we're facing, but I would be willing to bet that none of you are less busy now than you were 5 years ago. It's a one-way continuum that only goes towards more busy over time. So, you know, it's important to take these opportunities to be involved in your community when you can, and in your future leadership opportunities. And that's really all I'm going to say about Farm Credit and our sponsorship of this program. I do want to take a minute to introduce our speaker. John Lehr is a fantastic asset to the Farm Credit system. He has spent 32 years as a Farm Credit employee. He's a lifer, as we like to say, and he is a farm business consultant and vice president at Farm Credit East, based in New York. So he has a lot of dairy expertise, but also timber, equipment, farm-related businesses, all kinds of areas of expertise. He's got a lot of experience with budgeting, financial planning, taxes, farm transfers, all of those topics that I know that you all are thinking a lot about. So I'll let John add anything to his bio that I forgot to add, but I just want to say I know that you're going to learn a lot from him, and I appreciate him taking the time to be here to speak with all of you. And with that, I'll stick around for a little bit. So if you have any more questions for me, feel free to chat them. But thank you again, and I hope you enjoy John's remarks. Thanks.
Thank you, Brittany. This is John Lehr. Christy and Teresa, can we do a quick sound check for everybody that can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you, John.
Okay, what are you seeing for the audience? We are on Plan B. My internet is down today as I'm in very rural upstate New York. Can you see the screen right now, everybody at Farm Credit Strong at the Roots? That's it?
Yep.
Okay, we are aligned, and I'm just going to simply ask for next slide. So if we could go to the next slide, managing financial risk. And I'll go from there. The only thing I would add is I'd want to thank, I appreciate the opportunity to speak on a more national basis. We all get in our local trenches, so to speak, and this is good exposure for Farm Credit, myself, and just to hear, some of those names on the agenda that I've seen over the years. I really liked Amber and Steve's stuff. A lot of those thought processes align with what I do every single day. The only thing I'd add to my introduction is I do work with some other industries, but right now I'm working with about 55,000 cows in New York State. First half of my career, I was a loan officer. The second half of my career, I was a farm business consultant doing business transfers, expansion, exit planning, budgeting. So I'm very quick to tie everything to money in and money out. If you ask around, I'm the cash flow guy. I'm the guy that helps farms in financial stress. I help profitable farms make more money. My goal, meeting after meeting after meeting with my dairy producers, is to make them more money, pure and simple. So when I was asked to do this presentation of managing financial risk, I think what I came up was different from what they thought of. My mind did not go for managing financial risk. My mind did not go to puts, calls, and hedgings first. My mind went to budgets and thorough understanding of your business. Because I see too many dairies, size, irregard, whether you're 30 cows or 3,000 cows, that do not have a thorough understanding of their business, where they've been and where they're going. So that's kind of the spin I'm going to take today, along with sharing three different concepts. I think out of the box sometimes. I make the lending shop nervous at times, which is good. And I'm going to share some of those concepts today, and then come back to the financial risk tools, DMC, DRP at the end. So if we could go to the next slide, please. So as I define financial risk, and then again, this has nothing to do with the size of your dairy. I deal with dairies right now that range from, I think my smallest is 110 cows, my largest is 6,100 cows. So I see everything. But I think if we look at these questions, and I'm going to kind of read them quickly verbatim, but if you answer no to any or all of these questions, you have financial risk. And I changed the good to great. That's not a typo in there. I did that on purpose. So number one, do I have a great handle on my entire business? Not just your role of cows or finance or crops, but the entire business. Is that a yes or no? Is the cash flow steady in my business from year to year? Well, dairy, that's a pretty easy no for everybody. Am I an influencer on my business? Am I making a difference every day, or am I just going through the motions? Do I have the innate ability to look inward? And that's a special trait for people to look inward and say, what did I just say? You know, what is the unintended consequence of that next move I make? And looking inward and also seeing forward. Number 5, do I have a mentor or a mentor team? Or are you on an island? Number 6, I'm going to spend a whole lot of my next few slides, the next 20 minutes, on, do you have a thorough understanding of your business finances? I work with so many businesses that there's a 70 or 80-year-old that, typically mom, that is still handling the books. I was at dairy up near the Canadian border this week, my third visit there, working on a farm transfer. Mom is 85. She just turned the books over to her grandson. We skipped a whole generation. Her 2 sons never looked at the books, don't know if they could write a check. And again, I see this on small dairies and I see this on large dairies because we get in our trenches. Do you have a thorough understanding of the finance? Do you have a financial strategy? And have you set financial goals? So if you've had only one answer of no, number 2, I'm in dairy, it's never steady, you're probably okay. But if you have more than one no in those 8 set of questions, you have financial risk. Next slide, please. So as I go to the thorough understanding of the business, a lot of times we'll look at and we'll talk about where are we on the business curve? We hear first generation makes it, second generation uses it, third generation loses it. Why is that? I'm going to show you the next slide of where those generations may be because they chose not to make change. They didn't understand where they were on the business curve. And again, there's no right or wrong. It's just, what is that next step? What is the plan? I think both Amber and Steve talked about sticking to a plan. It's hard to stick to a plan if we don't have one. And that's where my role and my peers, there's 6 of us in the Northeast that do similar to what I do, of we help dairy see the future, help develop a plan. Ignoring where you are is a big financial risk, that 3rd generation or even 2nd generation. And are you conscious? Are we living off depreciation? That's a pretty profitable model, but there's an end date to that. Or are we growing or changing appropriately? And I just want you to, as you look inward on your business, to say, where are we? Next slide. This will be a line. I'm on the business cycle slide where you can see the curve of growth and time. And this is not a dairy business cycle. This is general businesses, period. You've got the joyride, we're growing. We've got everybody working together. We're making money. You get to the burnout stage and then you plateau. You either make a decision or don't make a decision. And if you're at that, I make a decision, that healthy business curve, we regenerate, regrow, or you continue that slow death or crash and burn. Where I see the joyride very often, the burnout is, where businesses may mature faster than their families. So think about that concept that, hey, we're doing really great. The early 70s, there was a lot of money made in the dairy industry. 80s, not so much. 90s, it was just a ho-hum. Then we hit the last, 20 years. The last 5 were ugly, but the 15 years from 2000 to 2015 were a joyride for the most part for the dairy industry. Lots of expansion on the West Coast, East Coast, Midwest. So we have this joyride. And again, it's size dependent. So if you look at that piece, and then you get this burnout. And when I said, the businesses mature faster than their families, it's like, all right, I'm at this plateau.
It appears as though we lost him.
Thanks, Christy. Let's just hold tight for a couple minutes as he tries to call back in. And if we don't hear from him in a couple minutes, then we will probably move on to our next presentation. Thank you all for your patience.
I am back. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
I apologize for that. So as we get where I was saying, your business matures faster than your family. You're gotta at the status quo, don't want the next step, and your kids are in high school. You get to that point where I'm burnt out. Then all of a sudden I see new energy time and time again on businesses where that next generation, operator comes in. And that is a decision point. Do I have, the next generation working side by side? We develop a plan and then we start up the curve again. So that's having an understanding there. Or I choose not to make a decision and I just kind of ho-hum that. I don't expand. I don't bring the next generation back. I think the vast majority of the audience that I'm speaking to today is under 45 years old. So you were hopefully pulling those businesses up that healthy business curve where there's been plan, there's change. You just didn't fall into the farm and, came home because you chose not to do or chose not to make a decision, but you chose to be there, chose to be in this career. And then we're back on that healthy business curve. But really having that honest piece. And we look at this at Farm Credit as our individual associations of where we are on that curve. When do we have to make a major change to this? It's just having a good understanding of that. Next slide, please. So when you sit and you look inward and say, all right, what's the action steps here? where are we going with this? Do we need to, upsize, downsize, diversify, add, consolidate dairies, do something with the neighbors? Who will we communicate that with? And some of the tools that I use to help people see, one, what that future could look like for a major change. So that was that plateau. So we'll do budgets. I'll do equity calculators. I've got EBITDA calculators, capital spending plans, and whole lots of sensitivities. Probably the biggest example of helping dairies see the future is I built this debt per cow calculator that amortizes debt, ties in a 5-year capital spending plan along with internal herd growth. So I got all 3 of those wound up on one spreadsheet so that we go through a major expansion. I had a lot of these up near the Canadian border, 2006, 2007, and they were scared of the debt level, but I knew they had short debt terms with their lender and good internal herd growth. You put that on there, and yeah, it's ugly for a year or two, and then all of a sudden the cow numbers, continue to create, debt goes down, and it goes right back to where they were. It was a great visual to see the future. Next slide, please. I'm looking at, again, this sounds very academic, the SWOT analysis. But the spin that I put on this is, even though this is academic, it's very powerful if you have everybody do this. Look at your business from an internal standpoint, the strengths and weaknesses, or an external standpoint, what's going to affect you for opportunities and threats, but really have a true understanding of what your business is looking at. Next slide. And I call this the kind of the 360 approach with the basic SWOT analysis. I want all the owners to do it independently along with key managers. If I've got a herd person that is doing it, maybe it's their role. If I've got a key crop manager, do their role, or finance. Then the piece is, if you've got a trusted team or influencers on your farm, be it your vet, your breeding team, the nutritionist, your CAFO crew, your banker, accountant, business consultant, or attorney, ask each of them to do that as well. And then pull all that together and say, all right, let's develop some action plans where we can capitalize on some strengths and opportunities and work on our weaknesses and threats as we try to develop a plan to go forward. Next slide, please. So the next 3 concepts you may or may not be familiar with, but I have found to be very, very powerful as I really dig into what's going on with profits on dairies, what the next step as we develop action plans. And this first concept is a 3-line analysis versus a 5-line analysis. And again, this is pretty basic if you're already doing this, but I see far too many dairies that are still doing the 3-line analysis. A 3-line analysis is simply income minus expenses minus net profit. If your books are set up that way, you're managing off a checkbook. There's not much you can tell with that. And not much you can tell with that if you're looking at your P&Ls, you get a year-to-date one every time. You need to break those down by month to say what's going on by category. By not having that understanding, you're adding financial risk. My opinion, that's the same as managing your checkbook. A lot of dairies are doing it that way. It's for compliance to file a tax return, not for digging into management. Next slide, please. What we have done for our benchmark group for over 15 years is driven your P&Ls to a 5-line analysis. This becomes extremely powerful, treats your dairy business like a manufacturing business. I quickly can identify a problem. And the concept is we have milk income minus variable expenses to come up with a gross margin. Take the gross margin minus fixed expenses to come up with net profit. And that gross margin and net profit tells us a ton. Tells me how well I'm converting variable inputs, labor, feed, crops, how well I'm converting those. Am I doing better than the last 3 years, better than my peers? And then as we look at the fixed cost utilization, we're looking at the bricks and mortar side, the fixed cost side. Are we at capacity? Are we above capacity? Is the parlor not full or over full? And how does that impact where we are? When I see a 5-line analysis of a dairy, I very, very quickly can say we've got to fix a management problem, something on the variable cost side, or we have a capacity issue that maybe we need to add units or diversify to spread those fixed costs out. This analysis has been extremely important in the Northeast in the last 8 months, as 2 of the 4 major dairy co-ops have gone to production quotas. I've spent my whole career adding cows to lower fixed costs, and now we're in a situation where we have to decrease production. This analysis helps us say, all right, what do we have to do? Do I have to diversify income stream? Do I have to right size? Do I have to get balance of resources? How do I do that and still remain competitive? So just kind of a 5-line analysis takeaway. Next slide, please. The second concept, I call this the liquidity wave, and we have a very unique opportunity in 2020 with the amount of government money that has been thrown at dairy farming, CPAP 1, CPAP 2, PPP loans. And as you think about this liquidity wave, where you are, if you're at the top of that wave, you're basically no prepaids, no payables. And then you got this going forward. So I'm going to give an example of pre-2014. I worked with a dairy that had $1 million in payables going into 2014. They were clearly on the left-hand side of this curve, where they're not even catching up with that wave. 2014 came, they worked extremely hard, got payables to 0, got to that top of that wave. Then milk price dropped the next 3 years. That wave went right away from them. One thing, they never felt 2014. And 2, they never got in front of that wave. Right now, we have the unique opportunity with all this government money. Most of the dairies I work with had $1 to $3 extra in cash flow. Even though milk price ebbed and flowed, it was started off first quarter to be strong. COVID came, it was disastrous, and then it's rebounded nicely. But if you look at that, we're in a really unique situation to fix or improve balance sheets. Next slide, please. So whereas, if you look at, what you're sitting on in your checkbooks now, we're going into low expense months. The goal to be on the right-hand side of that wave. I'm a huge believer in prepaying with cash for your checkbook, not borrowed money, to allow you to push forward. And it's a perfect year to do that and be able to utilize as a cash strategy, use that money twice. Example would be you prepay feed bill 1 month, 2 months. That money comes right back to your checkbook January and February because you have a lower feed bill. Then you're allowed to use that again. As I look at the cash flows this year, if I took all that government money out, it may be break even at best for most of my dairies. If I did the same thing next year, no government money, similar milk price, we're going to be break even. Well, I could be break even on an accrual basis, but I'd be that much further ahead because I've prepaid X amount of dollars versus buying equipment. You're at large financial risk if you're on the left-hand side of that wave. It's just, we talk about near cash in the Northeast, your checking plus savings plus prepaids minus payables minus operating loans is near cash. It's a good indicator very quickly how you'll fare the next few months. And most dairies are sitting on some money in the checkbook right now, especially with CPAP 2 just coming in the Northeast. A lot of it happened in October. To say, all right, how do I utilize that cash the best to put myself in the most opportune point of the liquidity wave as you're trying to improve balance sheets to position yourself for the future. Next slide, please. We'll go quickly through this last concept. I call this conditioning your cash flow. I do a lot of business transfers from one generation to the next, bringing in non-farm owners. And when I say conditioning the cash flow, the goal here is to successfully transfer that business to one generation to the next, related or unrelated, without bankrupting one for the benefit of the other, and vice versa. And this is a financial risk that I've made the bold statement over and over again. Senior generation or you taking low salaries or low draws will be setting up your business for failure. Because if somebody has to have a larger retirement than what they're doing today, because there's stuff buried in the electric bill and things like that, is there's going to be a shock to the system in terms of if I go from $20,000 a year and I need $60,000 a year or $60,000 to $200,000 a year, it's not cash flow neutral. So I push that we have to be making money, we have to be profitable, hence the budgets, and ratchet up draws and salaries for owners. So when the time comes where there's a transfer, I can flip the switch and call salary or draw, principal and interest, retiring partner payment, whatever we do it, but it is as cash flow neutral as possible to set the business up for success. Next slide, please. So those are the three concepts that I, kind of threw out. The other thing we alluded to is terms of the tools that are out there. You've got dairy revenue protection, DMC, hedging, contracting. All of those, you need a thorough understanding of what your net cost of production and your break-evens are. I'm going to give an example. When these production quotas came into the Northeast for two co-ops, two did, two didn't. Our senior management asked me as a dairy guy saying, is it going to be a difference between who survives this and who doesn't as to whether they're with this co-op or that co-op? And my answer simply was no. At the time when that question was asked, it was April. I said the survivors at that time, if that continued, I simply said were the ones that had DRP coverage and the ones that did not. DRP at that moment in time for the dairies that had that were so substantial, with those class 3s dropping, class 4s prices dropping. For anybody that had done quarterly protection, if they had bought coverage the summer of 19, fall of 19, were in a very, very good position as that market collapsed March, April, May, and then has recovered. But it wasn't a co-op thing to me. It was about the ones that had the innate ability to look inward, understood their cost, and had done some financial risk management. Most of all of them did DMC as well, up to the 5 million pound level, and DRP. In the Northeast, we do not see a lot of puts and calls and hedging with brokers. That's a liquidity issue. When you get into margin calls and things like that, the dairy industry, at least in the East, has not been in a position, to do that or finance that long term. The contracting, feed, fuel, milk, I'm a strong proponent of that. Looking at it, it shocks me right now the amount of dairies that have not locked fuel for next spring. If you look at fuel price, we're at a 10 or 15-year low, and if your broker will do that, that is again, trying to control cost. Bob DiCarlo talked about communication earlier. I truly believe 4 keys to business success and mitigating risk are time. Things can't happen overnight. You need a plan. You need to stick to the plan, as Amber and Steve talked about earlier. You must be profitable and be honest about that profitability. You've got to have a plan to stick to the plan and be constantly changing and chasing those goals and action items and holding people accountable and communicate constantly. We joke with my consulting group is that we're not going to go out of business because communication continues to be very hard and takes effort because everybody gets in the trenches and works really hard. It's just a communication piece. We become a safe place to vent, talk once a month, once a quarter, and everybody goes back to the trenches. So with that, I went through that fairly quickly to keep us on time. What questions you could do, you could use the Q&A feature of Zoom, and I'll let somebody, because I cannot see the screen, read those to me, and I'll do my best.
Yes, thank you, John. This is Tony here. Once again, if you have any questions, put them in the Q&A and the chat. We are right close to time here, so I'll give you a moment to think. But in the meantime, Brittany has posted in the chat as well that if you want to access the free Rural Resilience online course that Farm Credit has partnered with Michigan State, as well as Farm Bureau and the National Farmers Union. You can go to their website at farmcredit.com for more information. You can also reach out to John or Brittany or anyone on the NMPF team here, and we can get you answers to your questions if you have them.
Great, thank you.
And I'm not seeing any questions at this time, but if you have any, please, once again, feel free to pass them along and we'll get them to the right person.
Oh, it looks like one came in, Tony. In the chat box.
Yes, one from Jessica. So how do we talk with our older generation about letting us in on finances if they are convinced that they will never retire and hand over the reins? Right now, it feels like my husband and I are assuming all the risk. It's a great question. John?
I see that over and over. I think it's, not that it's got to be a subtle conversation and then ease into that you're not trying to take over the books. You just want to understand the books. And sometimes it's simply, could I get a copy of the P&L each month? Maybe involve the farm in a profit team or something else where it's not your husband and you that are, pushing that agenda, but a profit team doing budgeting or something like that. Extension has those, Farm Credit has those, just to kind of stimulate that conversation that it isn't dark and scary, that, to share that risk. The one I had, 85 years old, she can still do the books. She does a good job. It's just, we don't want her the only one knowing what's going on in those books so that we can help manage. So I think it's a subtle conversation, maybe a profit group to kind of backdoor that need, and keep trying. Do not give up on that one.
Great, thank you.